Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michael Barkann along with Barrett Brooks, the former Eagle tackle, with me on Eagles pre and post game live. And so it has come to pass, Double B. Carson Wentz is now a former Eagle, traded to the Indianapolis Colts as expected, as suspected, for a number third round pick this year and a conditional second round pick next year. You did not think this was going to happen ultimately, although grudgingly, I guess you kind of gave it some credence. But what are your thoughts at this very moment on it?
Well, I mean, I knew the Eagles were going to get, basically just, bamboozled by, anybody that they was going to be a trade partner. And, all along, there's only been one trade partner that the Eagles really were dealing with, and that's the Colts. If you ask me, I'm really surprised they even got what they got from him, from the Colts, simply because there was no market for Carson. Carson's play dictated that he not be even worth what we gave him. But just knowing that Carson will get better, he won't play at this level. He's a lot better than what displayed this last year in 2020. So, I mean, there's a possibility they'll get a lot more bang in their buck. Not this year, because third round pick is obviously terrible for a franchise quarterback, or what we thought was a franchise quarterback, and a second round pick. But the mere fact that he plays 75% of the snaps, he will be that number 2 pick will turn into a number 1 pick, and if they make the playoffs, it will turn into a number 1 pick. So they could eventually get the number 1 pick they were looking for, and I think that's the worth that Carson garnered. But I mean, it's still a bad trade. It's still $33.5 million against the cap. I don't think that they have to pay that $10 million unless they going to pay half, or they incorporated some type of deal with the Eagles that they would pay some of that or pay all of that $10 million. But, it's just a bad – it's a bad deal. Everything that we've invested in Carson, as far as the 5 picks it took to get him here, the capital that, that we, tried to make him a better player and bring in the players we brought around him, we'll never get that back from the fact that he's leaving now and going to another place. I really thought Carson Wentz was going to be a franchise quarterback for the next 10 years. He will be. He just won't be it here.
Yeah, although many still have their doubts about whether that will come to pass as well, Barrett. You talk about good trade, bad trade, and I put this up on Twitter, and it's got almost 1,200 votes, and I would encourage you to vote. Barkann, NBCS, and I just wrote, okay deal, terrible deal, and 60-40 saying terrible deal. 60% terrible,
Absolutely.
40% say it's okay. No one, I think, in their right mind would say it was a good or a great deal. So I just thought okay or terrible, and 60% say terrible. You think terrible as well?
I think terrible, yes, but we could reap the benefits of a first-round pick next year. And it's just, if Carson stays healthy and plays, he could get a first pick. But, you also have to come to the realization that if he does play bad, if they don't like what they see from him in camp, he doesn't work out, they could bench Carson, and then he'll be sitting there and they won't get the first pick because they won't allow him to get the 75% of the snaps that would garner a first rounder. So there's so many possibilities that could come with this pick, with this trade as far as draft picks. And then the mere fact that we're getting a third round pick for him this year. I mean, there's no way that I would make this deal happen with a third round pick the first year. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a travesty that we've invested that much in a player and we're just letting them go for peanuts. I mean, that's exactly what this is peanuts.
Mm-hmm. You'll recall, my friend, after the Arizona game, which was an Eagles loss, during which Jalen Hurts played out of his mind. And after the game, I reacted almost as if it was a win. And I single-handedly tried, and I say tried, to fend off you, Ray Didinger, and Seth Joyner, because I said, this is the future. I mean, you cannot bench your starting quarterback, your number 2 overall pick from 2016, a guy who is the franchise and is still going to be the franchise. You can't bench that guy. Bring this kid in who you drafted in the second round of that year's draft, and then have him play look like Joe Montana, for goodness sakes, or Tom Brady in that game and think everything's going back to normal. I thought that spelled the end of the Carson Wentz era right then and there after that Arizona loss. And so it has come to pass. And I think maybe you bench a quarterback if you want him for the future. Maybe you bench him for 1 week, Barrett. But they benched him for the last 4 games. And right there, it's like, you know what? We're putting him out on the curb with all the trash. That's what we think of this guy. I don't care what they said, and that's what's happened, hasn't it?
This is historic as far as the bad decision making of a franchise. I mean, everybody in the franchise, from the head coach, from the player, from the team executives. I mean, you just don't conduct business like that. See, people don't understand at the end of the day, the NFL is about business. Even though this NFL is a multi-billion-dollar business, they're gonna run it that way. Athletic talent, has a lot to do with it, but the more so selling tickets, putting butts in seats, selling jerseys. That's where the money's made. And it's always money decisions. They're going to run this, this multi-billion-dollar company. And at the end of the day, they made the worst mistake ever in doing what they did last year by benching Carson. If you didn't know that you wanted to go forward with Jalen Hurts. Why would you give this guy an early deal? They negotiated a deal, and I thought it was a cap-friendly deal for them if they were going to keep him. But since they're not going to keep him, it's totally, it's a totally bad deal. We're talking about $33.5 million against the cap, so you can bring nobody in. We're already up against it. At this point, we're $46 million over the cap. The NFL sent out, a letter saying that the cap will be set at $180 million. And at this point, the Eagles are right up against it, over it by $46 million. I mean, how do they get that? They got to let guys go. They got to, put themselves in a better position. I mean, this is a decision in which, all right, now you're not going to be able to sign back even your young players, like a Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett could count $10 million of his cap if they hit and take his 5th-year option. I mean, this is a young kid, pretty good defensive end, showed some signs of being a dominant defensive end. At times, it was hard for him to stay on the field, but he was still productive enough that I think he's worth $10 million. If he used to go to the free market, he's going to garner at the very least, 4 years, $25 million. And they can't even sign him right now because they're so far over the cap. That's a lot of decision makings that are going to be compounded just from this trade. Period, point blank.
Mm-hmm.
Compounded. You're not going to be able to get any fair market value for Carson. They didn't get it. And then they're not going to be able to sign a lot of players. They're going to let a lot of players go. So you're asking this new coaching regime to come in with their hands tied behind their back. They don't even know the players yet. They haven't even met the players yet. And they're coming into this volatile situation. It's going to be hard for this Eagles team to recover from this. It's going to take some years to recover from everything that happened with this negotiation and this trade.
And it's also going to be hard, my friend, to refrain from heavy criticism of Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. And it's about time we start lumping in Jeffrey with Howie. And certainly Howie has incurred the wrath of the Philadelphia media and the Philadelphia fans for trades that he has made, draft picks he has not made. And I'm sure that's a frustration for the Eagles. But when you hear the reports coming out of the NovaCare complex and out of West Palm Beach, Florida, that Jeffrey Lurie is as involved almost as Howie Roseman is in checking out the talent and pulling the trigger on some of these moves, the pointing a finger of blame needs to be cast as well toward Jeffrey Lurie. And when you think of what happened in 2017 season, and you and I, 3 years ago, last week, along with Ray Dittinger, were enjoying our day, an ice cold morning in Philadelphia from the Ellipse at the Art Museum, right in front of the Art Museum, as the Philadelphia Eagles celebrated their first ever Super Bowl championship with the Lombardi Trophy aloft. And every critic in the NFL said, this is a reload situation. These guys are going to be back for more the very next year, 2018, 2019.
The new norm.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so look what has happened. They have screwed this up in an epic way. They really have. But the worst part of it, and what's emblematic of that, Barrett, is Carson Wentz. You draft this guy in 2016, you move up to get him. They got their man. They went out to North Dakota and wined him and dined him, made sure they had their guy. And then to compound it, they give him a new deal. They give him an extension on his deal when there were injury questions really surrounding him. And now they shuffle him off to Indianapolis for a 3rd-round pick in this year's draft and a contingent number 2. Might turn out to be a number 1, but even if it does, Indianapolis is in it to win it. And so too was the Chicago Bears, because that was the other team reported to be involved in talks for Carson Wentz. So this pick could be more akin to a high 2nd-round pick. It sure as heck is not going to be a top 1st-round pick unless the Colts absolutely collapse, right? Which makes it a bad deal.
I think it'll be a later round pick because this team is built to win. Carson Wentz will have probably the number 1 or number 2 offensive line in the country, in the NFL. I mean, they're good. Nelson's probably the best guard in the league, him and Brooks, if Brooks is healthy. Yes. Huh?
Second with sacks.
Yes.
In the NFL.
So he'll be protected. Now it's up to Carson. Can he be fixed? I said it all along. Carson is one decision away from being a really good quarterback. And that decision is, will he listen to the people around him to make him better? I think he respects Frank Reich enough that he will respect what he has to say and allow him to grow and listen to him enough that he will be a good quarterback. He understands that he can't do it himself. I don't think he respected Doug, but that even that conversation, we let Doug Peterson go, a Super Bowl winning head coach, go for a quarterback that you have now let leave the building, that is now a Colt. I mean, you should have just kept Doug if you were going to do that. I mean, you could have kept the same culture. That team loved Doug. They would go above and beyond for Doug. Hell, they almost lost. They almost won the last game of the year because of Doug.
Mm-hmm.
From guys that, they were on the street the day before, started the game and played. So you let that quarterback, I mean, that was the quarterback battle we need to talk about. The fact that they let Doug and Carson battle it out and Doug lost. He ended up getting shipped up out of here.
And they still cost Carson.
Right, and they still cost Carson. So, I mean, what type of decision-making is that? To me, that's just all around bad decisions. Yeah. Compensation of bad decision. That the best quarterback in the building is left the building. The head coach has left the building. We let a great running back coach leave the building. The defensive coordinator was so disenamored with the organization that he left the building. I mean, there are so many factors.
Elvis left the building, for goodness sakes.
Right.
Elvis was in the building and he left the building.
So, what do you do from this point on? How they're going to have to build a new culture. They're going to have to make sure that this culture is befitting of a quarterback in which they're going to have to draft now. All signs are pointing to drafting another quarterback. So now you're going to have the same thing happen that happened last year. You got to draft a quarterback in the 1st round. What do you do with Jalen Hurts now? They're going to be competing for it. And it's not really a competition because when you have a 1st-round pick, especially drafted as high as 6, that kid's expected to start because he's the 1st-round pick. He's that high in the draft. They're going to want him to start.
Right. Well, during wartime, Barrett, there's an old saying that the first casualty of war is the truth. And I would say the corollary to that is the first casualty of the NFL offseason is the truth. So, we won't know what's going to go down. We won't know whether or not Carson Wentz is fixable. Look, if he's not fixable, if Frank Reich, the guy who really coddled him and coached him and had him going toward an MVP performance, if Frank Reich can't correct any of the ills of Carson Wentz, then they're probably not correctable. And then maybe the Philadelphia Eagles will have gotten a good trade, except for the part where they drafted him in the first place. Although he did help them to a Super Bowl. You can't deny that. But the question is, will they take, you said they have to take a quarterback with the 6th overall pick, or do they trade up even higher and try to get one of those quarterbacks that's been coveted? The guy from BYU, yes. Justin Fields from Ohio State, Mac Jones from Alabama. Some of these guys are going to be gone if the Eagles rest at 6, but they've got a pretty ripe quarterback class. And my question would be, can Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. They're joined at the hip now. Jeffrey fired Doug. Let's be clear about that. That was a Jeffrey move. Can the two of them assess the talent properly enough, which is the most important job in sports? Can you assess the talent? Can they do it well enough to get someone who is worth his salt in here, whether it's quarterback or any other position, coming up in the draft in April?
Well, at this point, they don't know the talent that they need to run the offense and the defense and the special teams of this new coaching staff. They don't know those facets of this team. So, I mean, I don't know. Everybody's talking about Nick Sirianni, the head coach, being a guy that's, more so a yes man. I'm up to go into Howie and say, look, I want these type of players. These are the guys that I want. I want to draft these guys, because that's the only way this system will work, is if they have a say-so in what they're bringing in. If you don't know what type of offense they're going to run, if you don't know what type of defense or special teams, how are you supposed to assess what players to come in to fit the system that head coach Nick Sirianni wants to implement? What type of players is Nick Sirianni like? If you look at what he had with the Colts, I mean, that's a lot of first and second round guys that are making plays. We've seen from the past couple of years that the guys that we've been drafting had not necessarily been at the top of a talent level that they're supposed to be playing at. We've always got the other guy instead of the guy, and we can't afford to go forward making those type of decisions. We just can't do it. We have to make sure that we go out and get the talent that could be associated that's going to implement, and I don't know if they can do that.
Right. And we know nothing about Nick Sirianni. We hope second coming of Bill Belichick, but we just don't know that yet. And he may.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's the problem with what's going on, Mike. We don't know, haven't heard enough from Nick Sirianni throughout this entire process. We haven't heard or seen or anybody talked about Nick Sirianni since his press conference. So who is Nick Sirianni? Nobody knows. We don't know as the media. I've been talking to players; they don't know either.
Yeah.
So how do we go forward into this draft process, and then get to the draft, get to OTAs? I mean, they're not even going to know how to go out and run what's going on, because they're not going to even be around each other. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. So there's so many factors, so many things that are pointing in the wrong direction for this Eagles team.
It sure is. And I would question you, and later we are going to have a special on NBC Sports Philadelphia on television. You'll also be able to see it here on our YouTube channel. You'll also be able to see it on our website and on our Facebook page. But we'll have a special that will begin at 1:30 this afternoon and go from 1:30 until 2 o'clock. Barrett's going to join us. John Clark will join us. Ray Dittinger will join us. And the questions need to be asked whether or not the Eagles can pull themselves up from this, and also whether this is the biggest organizational failure in Philadelphia sports history. When you look at it, there have been some that have been epic. Certainly the Sixers have had some, the Flyers, every team, the Phillies, when they let Ryne Sandberg go to the Chicago Cubs. Yep. There's been a lot of that. But this week, when you have a second overall pick that's led you to the Super Bowl and a Super Bowl win, and he's 5 years into a career, he should be just heading into his prime right now, and it's anything but.
Baby.
You know that. And so when you look at Carson Wentz, that's why I just question whether or not he is fixable to the degree that saw him get to MVP caliber level. I don't know if that, maybe it's because of his injury. Maybe it's because of concussion. Maybe it's because of a 100 things, but I don't know if he can get there. And
I'm saying he can.
You don't think he can?
I think he can.
You think
I think he's in watching film and really diagnosing. Number one, he played too much hero ball. He wanted to be that quarterback like he's seeing Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. He wanted to be that type of quarterback. And that offense do that because they didn't need that. What he needs to understand, that he needs to take the offense and run the offense how it's supposed to be run. Stay within the framework of what they're asking him to do. he did not listen to a lot of the stuff that Doug would say because he felt as though he was the smartest person in the room. When you're in that type of situation, you can't self-correct. Hopefully he has an ear for what Frank Reich says, and he's open to the things that Frank Reich is going to teach him. And if he has an open ear back to playing at that level, because you can't freestyle from an offense that you're not running. You have to run the offense first, and then when you're up against something, an adversity or something, then you can freestyle. It has to go with you learning and playing the offense the way it's supposed to run first. Then you can freestyle.
The other question is, Barrett, is the topic of accountability. And Jeffrey Lurie, when Chip Kelly went out the door, when he has made other moves, has said, I want accountability. That's the first thing. We need to know who's doing what, why they're doing it, and we want to maintain that on our way to success or to success again. And I'm wondering where the accountability is here and whether Howie Roseman is just going to continue to be allowed to make moves that fall up well short of the goal.
Well, at this point, all the accountability right now is going to go on Howie Roseman. I mean, all fingers will be pointed to him. Everything. At this point,
I mean, all the owners in every sport hold cities hostage, and it's just what it is. I mean, you know.
Well, at this point, I doubt seriously if you're going to get that from Mr. Lurie. I mean, in fact, I can almost say it's a foregone conclusion. You're not. All fingers will be pointed to Howie. Howie is the guy that's going to be in charge. He's the captain of this ship. So where this ship goes is where Howie Roseman pushes this ship. Now he's the guy that's going to be the talent evaluator. He's going to be the guy that's going to be the cap guy. He's going to be the guy that's going to bring in the players to Nick Sirianni's liking or disliking. All fingers will be pointed to him because when they're out on the field, if they're running an offense or defense or special teams that they can execute, he's going to get a major part of the praise. But if that team is not performing up to that level, he's going to get all of the harshness from the fans because he's the one that's made all these decisions. He made it very clear, and Nick Sirianni made it very clear that he's making a boatload of these decisions. He said, I would like to think that I'm going to have some power as far as bringing in the players that I would like. But he was not sure on that. He was not even sure that he was going to be – he said he might be in control of the 47-man roster on game day. But he was very clear on saying the 53-man roster is going to be on Howie's hands.
So, which is standard. And by the way, will you see back here? See this? So I mean, when they show up at that stadium next year, what the heck happens, Barrett? I mean, can we expect 10 wins, 7 wins, 5 wins? Like, what are we looking at next year?
I mean, I don't know as far as what this team is going to bring to the table because I don't know what offense they're going to run. I don't know what defense they're going to run. I do know they're going to have not the athletic talent that they've had in the past couple of years. They can't afford to have that type of talent. They have to let talent out the building just to get under the cap. They have to get rid of talent in order to just not even add, but get rid of. They've got to separate themselves from some players that have a cap value that's not going to put them where they need to be against the cap. They're not. I mean, Alshon, he has to be gone. D-Jax, gone. Malik Jackson, gone. At this point, they don't even know if they're going to be able to bring back a guy like Derek Barnett, a young guy that they drafted in the first round. He might be gone. I mean, they don't have the monetary execution of being where the cap is supposed to be at right now. They're so far the cap that they're second to the highest. I think the Saints are number 1. They are sitting right there at the highest of being over the cap. Yeah. So they don't have the autonomy to do anything but subtract. Everything's going to be a subtraction. And that contract, that $33.5 million, going to be sitting there looking at Howie and sitting at the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, while they're making these decisions. Nobody can come in for that money. That money is dead money.
Gone. That money, that's 33.8, I think, for $34 million for Carson.
So what's that?
That's 18% of, well, you said the salary cap's at 186.
No,
right?
180. 180.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
okay. Then it's more than it. It's probably more than 20% of dead money on that cap, just in Carson Wentz's former cap hit.
Well,
So,
yeah, that's
but
140. So our cap right now is supposed, in order for us to be under the cap, we can only spend $146 million next year because you got to separate that 33.5, and I just round up to 34. That's $1 million that they're going to be under the cap that they have to work within the cap.
that's absolutely incredible. I'm doing the math right now. That yeah, it's almost 20%. It's 19% of the cap. And when you
And they can't even account for it. They can't do nothing with it. It's dead money.
And when you look at this roster, you talked about all the people you were talking about, my friend. They're all under contract. I mean, so they're going to be cutting guys. When you look at the free agents on this team, there's not a one on the offensive side of the ball. Alshon, Jalen Reagor, Deshaun Jackson, Andre Dillard, Isaac Seumalo, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, Zach Ertz, Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, all under contract. Jason Peters is not. Richard Rodgers, Nate Sudfeld, Josh Perkins, Corey Clement. They are free agents. But everyone else on the offense is under contract, and you got significant defensive guys that are free agents as well.
No
But,
question. I mean, who are you gonna bring back as far as safeties? McLeod is not under contract. Not under contract. There's a lot of guys that, who are you going to be your safety? You have no safeties on the contract except for the rookie they had last year. I mean, it's going to be tough for them at this point. Avonte Maddox, he's under contract still. There's not a lot of guys that they could bring in to take the places of the guys that's going to have to cut to get out of here. I mean, it's going to be a bad situation. I want to see how Howie's going to handle this situation. This is going to be a tough situation for him to go forward in.
Yeah, and whether or not he's going to be able to handle it.
Right. You got to subtract before you add. You have to subtract. You got to get below the cap before you can start seeing and evaluate where your cap status is going to be at.
You know what else you have to do? You have to manage the expectations of a huge fan base of Eagles Nation that had such high expectations. The contrast between that parade that was just 3 short years ago, and then they went back to the playoffs in 18, went back to the playoffs in 19, and then they fall on their face in 20 and miss the playoffs, and now it's just all gone down the tubes.
Mike,
I don't know how the fans are going to deal with that.
Right. Let me look at the precedents that you set. The precedents that you have years. Your offensive weapons are going to be gone. D-Jax is going to be gone. Alshon is going to be gone. Major players. The likelihood that this team will be able to go forward and bring in anybody worth their salt is gone because they got to give it underneath the cap. I mean, at this point, there's so many things that this organization is they're starting over with. They're literally starting over without a quarterback they've had the last 5 years. Starting over without a running back coach they've had since he retired. We all know Deuce is. In fact, they wanted Deuce to be the head coach inside the locker room. A lot of the players they're disappointed because of that. Phipps gone. Special team. Start, and I guess it's okay. Because everybody has to learn this new now. Because I don't know how you define that now. How you define what it is to be a Philadelphia Eagle. I knew that you had the bodyguard back in the day that he was going to protect, and that was the type of nasty attitude and nasty disposition you wanted from your team. You have him. Other than that, what direction, they don't have a guy that, that you look at like that. I mean, you got Fletcher Cox. He's back.
Yeah.
He's going to be a staple here. Brandon Graham. Other than that, they have to set a whole new culture inside that locker room. Which way is it going to go? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at their front four defensively, Barnett, Hargrave, Cox, Graham, they're all under contract is what I have. Nathan Gary is not. Duke Riley is not. Jalen Mills is not. Cravon LeBlanc is not. Those are the starters that are
right.
Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of guys that you might have to say goodbye to, but you're also talking about saying goodbye to guys who they just might have to let go because of their cap situation, right?
How about Zach Ertz, the most prolific tight end we've ever had as an Eagle?
By the way,
you're
right. And he is a great one. And we point out that there were also that Zach Ertz be packaged with Carson Wentz, and maybe that way a deal would be more palatable to other teams. Ultimately, it did not happen. I mean, I guess maybe they could still trade Ertz to Indianapolis in a separate deal, but right now he remains a Philadelphia Eagle. So they're trying to figure this out. I guess it's a confidence issue, Barrett, and whether or not we can have confidence that Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman will do the right thing and know what it means to construct a winner again. Because I think most of us, I think you do, think that they should not be. I do. They should not be in this situation right now.
Absolutely not. No, I mean,
if you're going to be, if you thought you might be, then you don't sign Carson Wentz to that extension.
absolutely.
So look, the Rams traded Jared Goff. They got back Matthew Stafford. They had to give up picks. They had to give up other stuff besides just Jared Goff to Detroit.
Two first rounders.
2 first rounders for a guy who probably has more tread behind him than he does in front of him. That's the cost of doing business in the NFL when you've got a proven quarterback. And maybe that says a lot about Carson Wentz and how proven teams think he is. Look at Deshaun Watson. How many teams are clamoring for him, and Houston is still saying he is unavailable. But yet teams want that guy because that's how good he is. That was not the case with Carson Wentz, right?
Yeah, Carson Wentz didn't help himself last year in playing the way he played.
He sure didn't. All right, we're gonna say goodbye right now. Barrett and I, we could talk forever, and we just might. You just won't see it right now. But the news is, unless you're living under a rock somewhere, which sometimes I feel like I am, Carson Wentz traded to the Indianapolis Colts for a 3rd-round pick and a contingent could be a first rounder next year.
And I think it will be.
He's got to play 75% of the snaps, or Colts got to go to the playoffs and he plays 70% of the snaps. I would think one of those two is going to happen.
Yes, me too.
But we are coming up in 15 minutes on NBC Sports Philadelphia. We will be on television and went down what kind of confidence we should have remaining in the Philadelphia Eagles for the immediate future. All that coming your way on NBC Sports Philadelphia. Michael Barkann for Barrett Brooks saying thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you in 15.